Hello, it's Andrew with Gongs Unlimited, and I'm here with Mike Tamburo of Mike Tamburo fame. He's one of America's and the world's great Gong teachers, Gong players. We're so happy to have you here today, Mike.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
We've supported you a long time, and I'm always glad to see your success.
Yeah, I really appreciate the support, what you've done for me, and what you've done for the Gong world at large. Right. Yeah, really much appreciated.
Yeah, we just kind of fell into it, and here we are.
I mean, when you started out, there weren't that many mallet
No,
makers.
there weren't. Yeah,
and we were using, like mallets from all the different percussion
Well,
instruments.
the bass drum thing you're talking about, I was looking for anything that might do something. I remember I'm like, let's try to get a bass drum out. And it was harder than what we needed, but that level of the doubleness I thought was interesting.
It was very inspiring for me, and then we were using like marimba mallets. We're using things for like vibraphones. It was whatever could make like a different sound. And then I remember when Ollie Hess came out, it changed my life because I was like, I've never heard these sounds from this instrument.
Right.
And I had a day where I think I was doing like multiple concerts in one day, like 4 or 5 concerts in one day in the same venue.
Right.
And by the end of the day, I was like, oh my God, like I know this instrument in such a new way, and it was because I changed the mallet.
Right.
And that's something, sometimes we get uninspired by the instrument or something like that. We're not connecting as much. And all you have to do is like find a new implement to play it with, and you're going to hear a whole new world of sounds. And that's really exciting.
Yeah.
To me.
I just remember reading back then, I remember there was a guy who was in Colorado. He was just a house painter, but he got into he got some big Chinese gongs. And all of a sudden one day he orders like just a bunch of just Chinese mallets from me. I'm like, what do you need all those mallets for? He goes, I discovered, this is how early on it was, I got felt and some rubber bands, and by putting different felt on the different Chinese mallets, I get different sounds. Like that's how, this hasn't always existed like this.
Right.
It was like a house painter that's all he really, in Colorado figured out, oh, if I put this kind of felt on this size, he opened up his 40-inch gongs so much more.
Yeah, we're doing similar things to that, like wrapping the Chinese mallets with yarn.
Right.
So like putting like a piece of yarn through, creating a knot, and then like wrapping it around first the core, and then wrapping it all the way around the mallet. And yeah, I have like a box of probably 100 just like crazy mallets that I was trying to make, better.
It was a Wild West back then.
Yeah.
The early adopters. And now you're benefiting from a lot of hard work.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much creativity in the field at this point.
It's still open. I don't want to suggest that the innovation level is at all closed down yet. We're still.
Yeah, there's more now than ever.
Yeah.
And that's like what's really exciting. There's more gong makers now than have ever been, at least in my lifetime, as far as I understand it. And more mallet makers and more players, people playing with different ideas. Yeah. It's really exciting.
Yeah. And you did mention something which I think is fascinating to me now. It's like you were talking about people with sound sensitivities.
Oh, yes.
Because there are the audience, the clients, the groups for gongs that want to hear gongs or can benefit from a gong, event are much more varied. But the people are coming now that have issues with auditory processing, with all that kind of stuff. But they get tremendous positive changes from these gong things, but you have to be conscious of it. You can't just walk in and I'm going to do the same thing all the time.
That's something that's really important. Understanding that your gong is going to sound different in every single room, and that you'll understand like a part of this like blueprint of your gong. It exists in every room, but like what we're really hearing is like the room turning it into the resonance that is being formed. Like the tone is really like the room's tone in a way.
Yeah.
And so some rooms, for some reason, like the ceiling is like too hard, and it's like creating so much high end in the room, and you're like, oh my God, like everything is like bouncing down, and then I've actually started getting different mallets of. So say like I have this mallet. But I also have like a Ollie Hess mallet that they have some interlap, but there's about like 200 hertz of frequencies that this has that's above that. So I can kind of like take off some high end by changing a mallet. So like people are like, whoa, you have 50 mallets on the floor right now, and I'm like, well, a lot of the mallets, like I have like a series of medium mallets that do similar things, but for different rooms, I'm going to choose this mallet instead of this mallet, just based on what I'm hearing in the room. I never know what it's going to be. Like, I wish that I could be like, oh, this room is this material, and we're in these dimensions. But everything is like, I hit the gong, and I listen, and I try to play to the room that I'm in rather than just playing the instrument.
Now, here's a question, because you tour a lot, but there are people that will go, okay, I'm playing in Minneapolis, St. Paul, whatever, they do their local thing. Like, how long, like when you go into a room, you set up, how long do you take to kind of just vibe out the room sound-wise so you know which mallets to pick? Or is
it's happening in the moment.
Okay.
Because once people come into the room changes.
Okay.
And then, honestly, I don't know if you've ever seen my setup, but like, it takes me 3 hours to set up. So like, I'm in the room doing like a lot of other things, like, like trying not to destroy my toes by dropping something on me, or, it's all very much in the moment. I can walk around and clap and like have like kind of an idea of something, but as soon as people bring in like pillows, blankets, bodies, it changes everything. Changes the temperature in the room. Everything is.
So it's good.
It's very much in the moment.
It's very in the moment.
You have to trust your ear in the moment. And then, one of the reasons I don't really like to sit when I play, like you're really like kind of stuck in there, based on what, wherever you've chosen to sit. But I stand and I'll sort of like get my, like, okay, here's the tone that I like, and I know this tone in the gong. What happens? I'll step a few feet away. How is that behaving a few feet away from the gong? Right. And that gives me kind of like an idea, because like, I'm always listening into the gong and then listening into the room. And then I'm trying to, I can't listen 30 feet back. Yeah. I'm listening to some stuff that's happening 30 feet back, but like, I can't, take apart my hearing. So like, how is this behaving to the best of my understanding? As far out as I can go. I'm caged in, so like I can only go to like the back of the cage and then step back in. But this, being able to like come into the gong, find the tones you like, and then step away and hear how it's behaving in the space. And
then you go, okay, these mallets will lean better into this.
Yeah. Or you'll start to build something, and maybe like I always have these thresholds in terms of my dynamics. Like, I'm going to build up to this range of sound, and so like I'll get there and I'm listening and I'm like, well, that could be articulated better. Like, I'm getting to this like place where like this like high overtones that are starting to come out. I have a mallet that will make those sound fuller and richer in that range. And so then like I'll do like a quick switch. And often, if I'm going from like one hand to the other, like I'll keep this going, and then I may say if I was switching to this mallet, I might just like go with the same tempo, like from like where I left off, and then it'll take a few seconds for that crossfade to happen between, what was happening from one strike, like into the next. So those lows will disappear a little bit, the highs will come out. But it takes a few seconds.
Yeah, but it's an easy transition.
Really easy transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, again, you're really listening, it's all aesthetics.
Right.
Like, all of this is like taste in the moment. And because like every room is different, it's like, does this sound good right now in this room, in this moment, for like, the emotions I'm feeling and everything. So yeah, making all these decisions just as I'm listening to it. And it's like, I went to art school. So, I often think about this like, sculpturally or like painterly, like I'm adding like a different kind of stroke or a different kind of like coloration, or, and it's, like these are like my paintbrushes. So it's like I'm sculpting the air, and it's like, how does this sound good in the air? And there's no right or wrong. It's just my taste.
Yeah. That's I was gonna say, it's fun because my metaphor was going, having been from an acting and writing thing, like, oh, it's like you're improving a little bit because you're in the moment. Like,
always.
What do I have here? That kind of stuff, or if you're writing a mini composition with the room. But this is, I think, incredibly important for people, like when you've gone a little bit and you've hit that advanced beginner level, and then you're going, well, I've done all the things I've learned how to do. Well, then it's time, great, get to the intermediate level, open up a little bit more and be in the moment and experiment a little bit more. Because that's, at the beginning I'm just trying to learn, and that's great, that's important. But then
you have to learn, gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then you start working with like different levels of space, I think, is like, like you get your hand stuff down, and then the listening really starts to take over, and you're like, well, how long does this gong sustain if I do
Right.
something like this? Like, I don't actually have to do anything right here. And when do I come in?
Right.
So like I listen to like a certain amount of tones that are dying down as the gong is relaxing, and then like, oh, I come back in now. So you start to make like adjustments and compositional choices the more you get to know your instruments, the more you get to know your mallets. Everybody I meet that like first starts playing, like it's like bat out of hell. You're like, ah! and it's so exciting, especially if you weren't a percussionist before, and like you're it's so primal and exciting. But then like fine tuning starts happening, and you start to hear things coming out of the gong, which is amazing. Is as your touch becomes more sensitive, your ear becomes more sensitive, and so you start to hear new sounds coming out of the instrument because your subtlety started to form, but then your ear is able to listen to these sounds.
Yeah, you pick them up more.
It doesn't just like sound like wah anymore, but you start hearing all these like different layers.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, like that the ear is developing as your touch is developing.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because I know even for me when I was starting with gongs, all of a sudden I said, wait a second, I'm hearing 3 layers in this thing where I used to just notice one because
Right.
I didn't know to listen for it.
Yeah, and then at that point you're like, I can actually make these three layers work independently within
Right.
one instrument.
Right.
And that's where you start bringing in like different mallets. My favorite time, and I talk about this in the beginning of Michael Bettine's book, The Way of the Gong. Like when I listen to Michael Bettine, I can hear him listening. And like I can follow what he's listening to. And that's like a really interesting thing to be like, oh, I would make the same decision in this moment.
Right.
Or, oh, I would have made a different decision, but I understand
why he
did that. Like I hear what he's listening to.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Like I want to make sure that, the ear is what is guiding this music.
Right.
And a lot of times with, especially new percussionists, we're so into like the hand, so into like, making like contact that like we're thinking more in the hand.
Right.
But like the hand should be supporting the ear.
Right.
And that makes us composers, then we're like, oh, I want to do this now.
Right. Well, and it maybe you can clarify this a little bit, because like sometimes I'll watch myself or I'll watch other people. It's like I've been going here, and then you have this mood like I'm going to take it over here, but it isn't necessarily what you're listening to. It's just like where you're like, well, I've done this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I should do this now, versus kind of riding the wave. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you've taught enough people. Like, what do you?
Well, I started to, this was something I noticed about myself when I first started recording myself.
Okay.
And I would sometimes have, and so it's something that I've been working on for like the last like 11 years. Okay. So I would notice that sometimes I would have a new idea, and I'd actually stop listening to what I was doing, and I would all of a sudden switch to the new idea.
Right.
Whereas for the listener, it was actually me as the listener listening back. I'm like, oh, that was really jarring.
Right.
And like, I didn't actually finish the idea that I was on.
Right.
In a way where I could go to the next idea. So I started thinking about transitions. Like, how do I move from one sound to another?
Right.
Sometimes it's, and there's so many possibilities for transitions. Silence, excellent transition, just finish the part. Like, bring it down and then like come into something else. The crossfade, where like, I take the mallet off, but the gong is still vibrating, and I bring it down to a certain point where I know that the next sound is going to be able to take over.
Right.
That's like a great way as well. Switching instruments. I have this, one of the things I do with this mallet is I prime toward the tone that I want. It's like I don't go there right away quite often. Like you'll hear like often like some softer sounds, and then I'm like, oh, there it is. So it's easier for me to build up to the sound than just go like right there sometimes. Like I usually overplay it if I go right there.
Right.
So a lot of times like I'll start bringing in, like the other gong, but like I get it moving first, and then like I hear like a balance, and I'm like, okay, like I'm bringing this down, I'm moving this towards the end of this, and then this is starting to come in, and then eventually whatever's happening here starts to take over. But I got to say, I'm a real fan of finishing a part. And
you're not a fan. So
I'm a real fan of finishing it.
Right. Yeah.
At this point where sometimes that mood, silence is the exact thing. Like not playing is actually the right decision.
Yeah. Just because people can like, you don't always have to have the sound filled.
Yeah.
You can let it, you know.
And the more you go toward that, like, that, you know, silence floor, we'll call it, it's like the noise floor,
Right,
really. There's
yeah.
still like a
there's
certain
still-
amount of noise happening in the room, but the closer we go towards silence, the more acute the listener seems to become.
Oh yeah.
You know, so I really take my time. I mean, I'm a very dynamic player, but I really take my time to go there. But silence is excellent. It's like, okay, I finished that thought. And now I'm moving into like the next thing.
Right.
But then there are sometimes where we have an idea that is forming and it's based on what we're playing in that moment. And so that's a matter of like, you know, figuring out like the right kind of like crossfade transition or something my friend Mitch does a lot. He uses a lot of instruments like, you know, this Ryan Shelley D triangle or like keysy bells or something like that. And he'll bridge by bringing in another sound.
Right.
And so, you know, you have something like this happening and then, you know, something over top. Doesn't even have to be in there very long, but sort of like long enough that the attention is moved from this. You're able to allow that to decay. And then maybe the next thing is.
He's kind of, in this case, it's literally walking over there, but he's kind of walking over the sound.
Yeah, so it's like, and that's the idea of like what Mitch is calling the bridge. So, you know, even bringing in other sounds to be able to transition is something that's fantastic. And even, you know, a lot of my transitions are just like changing mallets as I'm playing, leaving a certain amount of space. In this case, like I'm going to create a pathway, like an L. Maybe I'll repeat that a few times. Similar force, similar direction, similar amount of time between strokes. And then it's almost like, oh yeah, that's come to an end. Like I used to play with tabla players and we would do things at the end, it would be like da 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 da. And I'm like, well, how can I do something like that where it's like, obviously this is coming to the end of something or the beginning of something else, or maybe not obviously. Right. And then maybe I come in with the next thing. But I really want to finish one idea. That's a long answer to a powerful question. And it's going to be different like all the time.
Right.
You know, you have to imagine how many possibilities there are for different songs. And I almost look at like, you know, each mallet, I'm like, oh, here's like the song I can play with this mallet, or here's like one of 50 songs I can play with this mallet. And then I pick this up and they inspire a different song. So lots of different approaches for different mallets. It doesn't always have to be the same.
I just think I've just noticed it in the evolvement of gong players. This is an interesting part of one's growth.
Yeah.
Is like, I've been going this way, and I think it's interesting because you're listening to the gong, you're listening to yourself, your mind, and you're also can be, in a sense, listening to the group of people, your audience, your clients, whatever it is, because they're like, that's why I said sometimes like what I love with this, I can let it go to noise room, to the room of the sound of the room, because their hearing becomes more acute. They're like, they're okay, because I've been to enough gong events that like, I'll sometimes just get lost in the blur.
Yeah.
And I stop responding to what's there. So it's all that I thought was really unique, and I hope is helpful for anyone watching, because it's a lot to gauge while you're in the moment.
I agree. You know, I'm also a studio musician, and something that happens whenever we're mixing is like the ears just kind of reach this point where they don't really work in the same way anymore. Right. Like if you're listening to the mix too loud, you sort of lose some of that articulation over time. And I started noticing like the same thing, like people's ears were getting tired from having, you know, just the same dynamic and the same like tonalities. So my idea is always like, you know, keep like the ear like stretching, keep the ear you know, following the sound. Don't oversaturate the room too quickly, because you're just going to tire the ear out. Yeah. Like if you start out too loud, too quick, like where do you go from there?
You're going down.
Well, yeah, I mean that could be that could be something great. I mean, you know, structure and form. There's so many different possibilities, and you're touring as much as I do. I get to, you know, each night really look at that in different ways. Yeah. But I had one student once, and sometimes what you play after something is more important than like what you just played. and the first part of this piece that she had written was like so intense. Oh my God, I thought I did something wrong. I was like, is she mad at me? And like all this stuff started coming up. And like she really attacked the gong in like a hard way. And then the second piece was just so gorgeous and like so like well timed and like such beautiful tone that like all of this like anxiety that came up like during the first part where I thought she was mad at me, it just like all disappeared.
Right.
You know, so like the way that we're working with, you know, one group of sounds and then like another group of sounds, we can even change like, oh, I've created tension here. You know, like how can I release
Well,
that
it's almost,
tension?
when you were describing it, to me it sounded like, oh, there was the thunderstorm and then she played the flowers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy for that. So, you know, there's always, as long as like we're considering, you know, like what happened before, what's happening now, and like what are the possibilities ahead. But, you know, to not forget like what you've already done.
Yeah.
You know, like I have in my mind as I'm playing, you know, certainly I'm in, you know, some sort of like flow state or something. Is I don't know like where my brain goes, but I still have like awareness of like the first sound that I made.
Right.
And like how this has all blossomed out of that. And even as I'm changing instruments, I'm like, you know, like, oh, like my part A was like really like mellow, and I moved between these instruments. Part B was like a little stormy.
Somewhere in there, the compositional part of the brain is remembering what you're doing that day.
Yeah, and so that way I understand the arc.
Yeah.
Or like the various arcs,
Yeah.
you know, that can happen throughout a piece, and also like where I've held the listener. And you know, like we have some ideas around the gong. My friend Mitch works with something called he calls the Gansfeld, and in the Gansfeld we're playing like the upper part of the gong, and we get it to a point where we don't change it, and it's just like essentially this for about 20 minutes, and we don't change it. And at that point, as a player, you're just, I mean, I'm a very closed eye visual sort of person, but it's like, I'm in, you know, the geometric matrix. And then also for the listener, and we started to see like by not creating changes, we could sometimes induce visions in people that are able to have visions.
Right.
And by, you know, sort of creating this like field of sound that is unchanging. It's sort of like looking at TV static or being out in the snow and there's like nothing there, and suddenly you start seeing things in the snow.
Similar to creating like anyone who's ever come across a gamelan orchestra.
Yeah.
Like the first time I heard it, I was basically put into a trance because I couldn't, you know, that repetitive within a very limited structure. I couldn't tell you what it does to the brain, but it definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have rhythms happening, and then you have like the way that the instruments are tuned, and they're tuned like a few hertz apart in many cases, and so you have like beating patterns that are happening, and then you have a full range of sounds like up through like the octaves. So like they're really like pressing on almost everything that you can listen to. Like there's like the low bass, and then like you have like the highest of high metallophones, and there's so much there. Well, I'm hoping that you know, this is a useful time together for everybody. I hope that I've given, you know, the Dragonfly mallets a nice little introduction, and we've talked about a lot of topics that are just you know, gong important.
Yeah, I think it's all when we have someone that has a lot of knowledge, experience, and we here at our business deal with from the very most beginner to the people who will basically tell me they are the Godhead, and they are anything they should say. I should. We have the whole realm. We have the whole realm from beginner to ultra expert. How about that?
What do you do when the Godhead is online?
Yeah, exactly.
Late at night looking up gongs.
I'm not over exaggerating. It's not hyperbolic. But that's okay. I love you all.
I played for the Godhead.
Yeah, exactly.
He was into it.
We do love you all. But I think it's great because I'm sure we'll edit this, but there's so much information here that you've provided. Really grateful for it because it's sharing.
Yeah.
And people are going to take whatever they can take. Someone's going to hear one line and go, I needed to know that.
Right.
And they're going to bring something to themselves.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think it will.
Yeah, I think that if we think that, I mean, this culture in terms of, U.S. gong playing is 100 years old.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not that old. Like nothing is like that in like that fixed.
Yeah.
And I think that if we're able to, meet each other as colleagues and realize that we can help the culture together, it's going to grow much faster. Like if we share all of our tricks and like don't like, keep like these like secrets, like I have this secret technique that like, nobody can see.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't help anyone. But so like I want like all of my techniques to be, there for people, and I steal everybody's techniques. Like everybody, like I see something, I'm like, can I adapt that to what I like? Like how would that work with this instrument? And when I see them, I give them props. Like, hey, I stole this from you in class, and I've been using it ever since.
It reminds me of that thing with Nirvana, where the opening to "Smells Like Teen Spirit" was actually the Dave Grohl just said, "Oh, I took it from this, like I think it was a Chic."
Yeah, it was a Chic song.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Two different worlds, worked in both.
Yeah, most definitely. and I really see. I mean, if I can look into the future of gong music right now, more collaboration.
Yeah.
More work with drummers. I think like drums and gongs should very much be together. Like having like the drum kind of like hold people there, grounded, and take them out with the gong. I think that's really important. Trying to get gongs into situations where you don't usually see gongs, like your local ambient band. Like I listened to some of the stuff in that playlist.
Yeah. The ambient complex. Yeah.
Man, fantastic.
Yeah. And that's all just mostly the guys from here.
Yeah, fantastic guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to be able to bring the gong into different spaces, the sound bath thing, who knows? I'm surprised it's lasted this long.
Yeah.
I've seen scenes come and go, and I'm glad that it's lasted this long.
And we're being parodied in big movies now. So it's like, and The Simpsons even had a bit where Grandpa fell in love with the one playing the gong at his retirement home.
I didn't see this.
Yeah, so we've reached Simpsons parody. So then, how's it still around? Because it still works.
It still works. Yeah, I mean it's. Well, I think the culture of listening is what needs to like really change right now, and I think that these instruments like kind of create a space for a different kind of listening, and even like in terms of like concerts, like man, I really like being comfortable. I went to see Dark Side a few weeks ago, and it was awesome, but like after like 2 hours, I'm like, oh, old man legs, and next night I was laying down and like this is way better. So, I mean, being able to look at like, how we're receiving sounds, like that's changed with this culture. And I think that if we keep it interesting and vital, and this is happening like, new gongs are coming out, gong makers are, making really exciting instruments, mallets are coming out, new sound devices are coming out.
Same thing, and I would even say like the same thing with people used to contact me like 10 years ago, like, I can't believe I'm experiencing this kind of healing.
Yeah.
And I always go, we're literally on the frontier of this.
Sure.
We're going to be all long dead and gone, but I really feel like they're figuring out how to use sound more and more for healing.
Yeah.
And I go, so just enjoy and experiment and explore. Try not to put too much of a format on it yet, because we don't know where this sound healing is going to.
Yeah, don't think of the outcome first.
Yeah, that's why I said it's great that people are having an amazing experience with you.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to codify it quite yet, but let's just keep experimenting.
Yeah, I mean, God, after you play for a long time, like at first you think it always works. You think like something is like always happening, and then like you like have somebody come, and then like they came because they knew they were dying.
Right.
And then they die the next day. It's like like you didn't like stop their death by playing the gong for them.
You might have
like, but they came for a reason that was like emotional, and so like there are all these different levels of why people are there, and I guess even like different levels of what we can consider to be self-healing.
Right.
But yeah, we're really providing the soundtrack for so many things: inspiration, imagination, self-work, self-healing, inward movement. Yeah, it's powerful. But I think all music does that.
Yeah, all music does that. That's the thing. I go. Sometimes you just want to listen to some Schubert. You just want to listen to some Mozart. Whatever.
I'm going to see AC/DC when I get back.
There you go. Sometimes, yeah. I had my spiritual experience with the Flaming Lips.
I did too actually once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Milwaukee, 2014, I think.
Yeah, see, I was just in Omaha recently.
Oh, nice.
So there, so grateful for you to be here and do this.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see how this all turns out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think it'll turn out great. Thank you.
Thank you.